So let's do how to get Tails running and recover a 24-word seed. So firstly, you've just got to go to the Tails website. So you can see there, it's tails, tails.boum.org/index. And I'll put a link to this in the description. Just also being aware, actually, that it's possible sometimes that when you Google search for things, like if you just Google search for Tails, it's possible that someone will have paid for a dodgy ad that will take you to a website other than the official Tails one. But there are several layers of security in Tails, I think, that make that a lot less likely. So you go to the Tails website, you just click install. It's a nice big green button, which is great. And once it's done that, you just tell it which operating system you're installing from. You can just do the download only, but we are going to want to verify the image. So we're going to follow these instructions, which will include how to use the tools to verify the image. So I'm on Windows. Alright, install from another Tails. You can do that if you're especially concerned with security of what you're doing, but I'll just do it from here. So you will need a USB stick that's 8 gig or above, however long it needs to take to download it, a bit of time to copy it to the USB. And again, this will vary depending on the USB you're using. This will vary depending on your internet. It will not work with the smaller one. It'll get halfway through burning. It'll look like it's succeeded, and then you'll go to boot and it won't work. So just save yourself the effort and use a USB that's at least that big. They're cheap as chips these days anyway. So we want to install from Windows. And these instructions are great. So they really step you through the whole thing. So we say, let's go. So firstly, we want to download Tails. So I'll download that, and then we'll come back in a minute once it's done. Alrighty, so we finished downloading Tails. There it is. So it's like a gig, 1.1 gig, and that is good. So now what we want to do is we want to verify the download using our browser. Now, it is worth saying that we can verify the download using something. If we download using BitTorrent, the torrent client will verify that for us. So that's another way to do it. But again, not everyone's going to be au fait with BitTorrent. Also, if you're feeling a bit techie, you can use OpenPGP to verify the download. But what we're going to do is use this browser extension, because I think it's also just really good to use. And the browser extension is helpful in that if you install it, this entire website could be compromised. So say someone on the system, on the network you're using or whatever, had done something or other which gave you a site that looked very much like the Tails site, and we're giving you a torrent that wasn't actually legit, and had some signatures here that they just shoved on themselves. At least in my opinion, having the Tails extension in Chrome on the Chrome Web Store is, I guess, a separate part of or a completely separate element in the system that would also have to be compromised for someone to successfully have you download, install, and run completely the wrong thing. So it's an extension, and again, if you're not satisfied with this extension being legit and want to understand it, you can actually go to their website and they've got information there, including the source code and everything. So it's just a really helpful thing, and once you add that onto Chrome once, yes, we'll allow that. We can then just keep that forevermore. We don't need to worry about updating that. It'll update itself, and that's just a really handy thing to have. So once we've got that extension installed, and this is Chrome obviously, that's detected now that it's there. So what we're going to do is we're going to click Verify Tails, and then it's going to ask us to select the file. Alright, so we navigate to where the download went to, we select it and just say Open, and it's actually just going to sit there, and it'll take a little while. Not a little while as in hours, but maybe a minute or two depending on your computer, and it's just going to verify and make sure that the image file that you've downloaded matches what it should, that it's genuine, that you haven't downloaded something that's been altered in some way. And I would suggest that it's worth verifying this every time before you burn it. It might seem a bit paranoid, but I think it's worth doing, just to again make sure that someone hasn't altered the image that you might have been storing on your computer or on your network or wherever you're keeping a copy after you've put it onto a USB. If you're wanting to say, make multiple USBs with all of this on there. Alright, so it's verified, it's all happy. If it says no, like if it says it's not successful, don't just burn it anyway and hope for the best. Download it again and be a bit sus. And they give really good explanations here for everything. And again, this is a big reason why I think Tails is really good to use, because they explain what some of the systems or what some of the scenarios are that sort of would lead to these vulnerabilities, and help explain why you need these tools. So anyway, you can read into that as much as you like. So we're just going to follow the bouncing ball, because again, their doco is really good. And look, they even tell us what to do. So we're going to download Etcher. We'll just come back in a minute once it's done. Alright, so we've downloaded Etcher. It's now there with the image that we had before. And again, just following the bouncing ball. So we're going to plug in the USB stick. And again, the standard warning, this is not something that's going to be installed alongside. This is going to wipe everything that is on there. So let's open Etcher. Oh yeah, we're going to run it, and USC didn't seem to care, but that's fine. So let's select the image. There it is. Let's select the USB. Yep, that's the right one. You can see it's 64 gig, this one, so it's way overkill, but that's fine. Do make sure you've got the right one selected. I would really suggest just unplugging every other USB stick from your computer so you don't accidentally wipe something else. And then we just hit flash. You can even see this. Looks the same. Hit flash and we wait. Alright, so the UAC prompt from Windows did come actually when I hit flash, and that stopped the recording. But anyway, that's flashing away now, and it's pretty quick just because that's a USB 3 USB that I've got in there. And again, this is just following all of the instructions in there. And then once that is done, you've got Tails ready to go on a USB stick. Alright, and it's done. We don't want to flash another, we're happy with just one, and that's it. And it says, congratulations, you installed Tails on the USB stick, and you can now restart the computer. It will be a bit complicated, so good luck. So it says here again, open these instructions on another device, so like a phone or something, and or print them out if that would be helpful to you, and then reboot on Tails. So shut down the computer while leaving the USB stick plugged in, turn it on, and if the computer starts and the Tails bootloader thing appears, then that's good. Otherwise, what you'll probably have to do is, on a lot of laptops, for example, they'll have a message that'll flash up really quickly that says something like, press F11 for boot options or press F12 for boot options. And again, their troubleshooting section talks about exactly that kind of thing. And you may need to refer to the documentation that came with your computer, or if it's like an old laptop, just try one of these suggestions here. So usually there's something you will need to do if it doesn't automatically boot off a USB. So that's something that you'll just need to look through yourself. Again, it goes pretty far into detail as well, like disabling things like fast boot, but I suppose these things are so device dependent especially if you need to start editing BIOS settings so that it'll boot from a USB, that I don't think it's productive to really go through it in this video. This is the one bit you will need to, I guess, read their documentation in detail and just work out how to convince your laptop to boot off a USB. So yeah, it's usually pretty straightforward. So we'll do that. Alright, so at this point you've put Tails onto a USB and we've rebooted, and I'll just show you what you're going to get. So just because it's easier to record the screen from a virtual machine, I'll run Tails in that, but you'll get the same appearance and stuff that I want to show you as well. It'll all behave in the same way. Now, I should emphasize as well that I've mentioned this before, just running Tails in a virtual machine is not sufficient security in terms of giving you an air-gapped safe environment. Okay, so running something in a virtual machine can help. It can be better than just running it normally, but for what we're doing here in terms of the security that we want for dealing with private keys for crypto, running it in a virtual machine doesn't cut it. It's not going to help you from like malware and other things that are basically going to be logging keystrokes or anything like that. Okay, so Tails is booted, and you might need to change your keyboard layout, just depending on obviously what your keyboard layout is. So I'll just change ours. English Australian, English US are the same. You might want to change your formats. It has additional settings here, and if you are needing to install software that requires admin, so super user level access, you need to set a password when you're booting. Now, you can also at this point disable all networking. So for the purposes of crypto, I do think it's worth disabling all networking, just as a good habit in case you forget to unplug stuff. I think it's important. I think it's really important with crypto stuff and dealing with private keys and all that sort of stuff to remember that the human factor for this stuff is really important. And so simply developing good habits of saying, look, I'm not going to need networking, I'm going to disable it as well as unplug it. But we'll just say connect directly to the Tor network here as well, because I think it can demonstrate something that's useful to see. We're not going to worry about setting an administrator password because we don't want to be installing software, because everything we're going to be doing will simply run out of a browser, so we don't need that. We don't need anything more than the browser that comes with Tails. There we go, and it will warn you if you're using a non-free virtual machine. And again, this is one of the things I love about Tails, is it's something that has layered security, and it'll warn you if you're doing unsafe things. Like, for example, it'll warn you not to skip verification. It'll warn you if you're running in a virtual machine, so that it can't be considered trustworthy. So again, I'm just demonstrating something, so we don't need to worry about that warning. If you're running this on a normal computer, it shouldn't give you that warning at all. So what we'll show you now, so this is just the normal Tails desktop. So what we're going to do now is I'll just show you something where we plug in a USB stick. So this is a second USB stick plugged into the computer. So there you go, it's picked up that USB in Windows. We'll just pass that through to the VM. And if we wait for a minute after connecting that USB, it'll actually appear for us in home. So Tails is user friendly enough that it'll automatically mount the USB that you stick in there. There we go. So if we go to home, we can see that it's mounted new volume. That's the USB stick that I plugged in, and that has the tools. These are some tools I used in another video, but the Ian Coleman's BIP39 tool is just there. So this is another important thing. So if you're just looking to run some of these tools straight off the USB, when you go to run them, you'll actually get an error message, which if you're not familiar with what to do, can be very confusing and annoying. So we're just going to start the Tor browser because we're offline. We're not interested in the Tor side of what Tails does. We're simply using it in an air-gapped way. There we go. So let's open the browser And if we just give that a minute to finish loading, because it will be a bit slower than perhaps you're used to, just because it'll be running everything off a USB. There we go, and it's going to say access to the file was denied. Now, one of the things with Tails is the Tor browser is, well, one of its security features is that it's very selective about where it has read access to for files. So if you try and run something straight off a USB, won't work. It'll give you that error. If you copy it onto the desktop and run it, won't work. Same error. So you'll notice when you clicked on the home button, there's this folder called Tor browser. Okay, so when you put things in here, then and only then are they accessible by the Tor browser. And again, this is great. So the kind of errors it gives you, not errors, warnings. So we're not worried about being tracked in terms of Tor and browsing, so we can ignore that. And there you go. So now here we are. So this is the Ian Coleman BIP39 tool, which means that we can either generate ourselves a 24-word phrase that we want to use for, say, an offline wallet, or we can go about using that tool to pull out and extract individual private keys for individual addresses for cryptocurrencies that we might want to use or import into a new wallet, or there's a whole range of reasons why you might want to do that. You might even just, and I'll probably make another video on this, have a sort of paper wallet that you essentially store these 24 words and use the public addresses on there to give you essentially an offline hardware wallet level or paper wallet level of security without having to worry about handling all these backups that are essentially phrases like that to try and keep. So you could have like a multi-currency paper wallet with just a single 24-word seed that you can back up in an easy way, and that could be really useful. So that's a really helpful thing. So we've basically just gone through these instructions, stick the files in the Tor browser. The only one thing I'll show you as well is the other useful feature of this. So basically, we'll just enable networking in the virtual machine. So what I've just done would be the equivalent of just plugging a network cable back in to the computer. So we can see that it's got the network, and that little onion thing there is its connection to the Tor network. So the Tor again is sort of like an internet anonymization service. You might have heard people talk about the deep web and things like that, and Tor is a tool that allows you to do that in a way that's very good at getting around blocking and surveillance mechanisms that might be set up. So if we just try and ping Google's DNS servers, we'll see there it actually doesn't work. It's being blocked because we're trying to access it without doing it through the Tor network. So there we go. I've started the Tor browser, and after a little while it's sort of started connecting. It says, Tor is ready, you can now access the internet. So what we're surfing on now with this is being secured by Tor. But what's very interesting is even while Tor is active, and the browser will work through that, and it'll be a bit slower because it's going through the many layers of encryption. Things that don't go through Tor still don't work. They're still blocked, which is really useful. So, and even if we were to try to do other things from the command line, so for example, just to demonstrate here, I've got a Python script that we often use. So just to demonstrate another way that this is powerful, in that, say we had a Python application. This is getpip, which is a legitimate application that people might use. Just by default, if we go to run get pip, so what get pip does is it tries to talk to a server that hosts sort of like Python applications and things, and goes to I guess download some resources and install them. And basically, what it's trying to do now is it's trying to connect to the Python servers directly, and it's not working. So again, like if you've got just a really basic script that someone's written that's going to like immediately leak data that it shouldn't online, this will provide you with, I guess, a measure of protection that just being connected directly to the internet does. And again, I can't emphasize enough, I don't think it's a good idea to be online when you're entering private keys into Tails. I think best practice is that you basically disconnect, you do the private key based stuff, and then shut down, and then that will just wipe everything that you'd entered in, rather than just simply closing the browser tab and then thinking, hey, I'm okay now, and using it like a normal desktop. No, don't do that. So there you go, and then once you're finished, just shut down, and then that will remove every trace of everything you were doing. The only other thing that I'd add is this probably is a helpful way to understand sort of the benefits that a hardware wallet gives you, in the sense that it gives you this sort of air-gapped level of security with a device that can be plugged in and can run securely on a computer that's like full of malware. So if you haven't got a hardware wallet, I think a Ledger Nano is a really great place to start. And again, if you're just sort of new to the space and don't have hundreds of different cryptocurrencies trying to store, a Ledger Nano S can be a great investment. And if you're feeling like spending extra money, the Ledger Nano X can be good, but frankly the Ledger Nano S can do everything pretty much that the X does in terms of security, and is like half the price. So yeah, your best bet for them is just to buy it directly through Ledger, and they'll send them internationally, and I've just thrown a link to that in the description as well. So if you found this helpful, hit like on the video, that helps me, and certainly subscribe if you're interested in this kind of stuff. I'm planning just to, I guess, cover a bit more ground in terms of just being familiar with some of the tools that can help you get out of trouble if you're stuck in terms of crypto, but also can help you to understand some of the practices to avoid just getting scammed, because again, there are no shortage of websites that just want you to shove your 24-word seed key straight in online, or email it to them, or send it to them on Facebook, or any of those things. Just avoid all of that, and I guess learn some good security practices. So I hope that's been useful, and yeah, best of luck. Let us know if there's any particular elements that you get confused with, and I'm happy to I guess help you out in the replies or direct you in the right direction for that.